And my first question is, what is the theme of the prologue? If somebody happens to ask you what is the theme of the prologue, what would you say? Because everybody says that there is characterization, nobody can deny this fact that there are a number of pilgrims who have been portrayed by the poet, but what about the theme? Because every poem, every play, and every genre in that sense does have a theme. Similarly, the prologue cannot be an exception. So it must have a theme. And therefore, when somebody happens to ask you about the theme of the prologue, you have to say that this is a social satire aiming at aristocracy or nobility, church, and peasantry. Peasantry means the common man. So if somebody happens to ask you what is the theme of the prologue, you have to say it is a social satire aiming at the nobility, the church, and the peasantry, that is the common man. All right, that would be in brief the theme of the prologue. Now, yesterday we did certain characters, and the characters were the prioress, the monk, the friar. We summarized the character of the prioress before I ended the class, but we could not summarize, means I couldn't put you many more questions, the short answer questions about the monk and the friar, and therefore I would like to ask you some questions about the friar and the monk. What do you think about the character of the monk? What do you think about the character of the monk? I need your answer in one word. How have you comprehended the character or the pilgrim monk in the prologue? And if somebody happens to ask you this question, you have to tell him that he is a rebellious character, rebellious against the church. He does not bother about the rules of the church and follows his own ways. He says, I don't care of the rules of the church and follows the ways that gives me comfort. Then secondly, when we talk about him, he is he is a religious character, but then realistically, he is very materialistic and he loves hunting. He loves hunting and everything that he does goes against the clergy. He is a clergy, but then everything that he is doing, whether hunting or doing all the other things, they do not belong to the profession of a monk. Right? So there are two words that summarize the character of the monk. Number one, he is rebellious by temperament, and whenever he thinks that there is something in the church that creates trouble in his comfort, he would be happy to violate all those things. Number one. Number two, apparently he is a religious character, but then in reality, he is not religious at all. He is a hunter. And he loves all the luxuries which are enjoyed by a materialistic person. So, this is what about the monk. There is, as I said to you earlier, means in the yesterday's class also, that there runs a satirical vein in the character of the monk throughout. And therefore, if anybody happens to ask you, find out the most satirical character in the prologue to the Canterbury Tales, then you have to say that monk is one of the most satirical character besides the character of the friar and the friar and the pardon and some other characters. After having talked about the monk, let me talk about the friar. Friar was a limiter. And who is a limiter? Limiter is the person who is given license by the church of begging in a certain area. Remember this. This is very significant. Limiter. Limiter is the person who is given the license of begging in a certain area. And this friar is a limiter. He has been given the license to beg in that particular area. And fortunately, his task is to take care of the common man. And the lepers means the person who suffers from malady. But rather than taking care of the people who are ill or who are sick and who belong to the lower strata of the society, he he is in contact with the people who belong to the upper strata and who can do him monetary favor. So again there is a contrast between the reality and the appearance, and when we talk about this contrast we talk about the irony. So the character of the friar is very ironical because there is a visible contrast, the contrast that can be felt by us, that what he says he doesn't do, right? That contrast will bring or will give rise to irony. So this is what about the limiter. There is a name, the poet says that his name was Hubert, Huberd. He says this, but nowadays it will be spelled as Hubert. Hubert was his name. And now the another thing, as I said to you, when the poet wants to express his like or dislike about a character, he does not do it directly, but by narrating the appearance of the person concerned, he will be talking about either the like or the dislike of the character. And one of the things on the basis of which you can deduce, you can reach a conclusion whether you can reach a conclusion whether this gentleman was liked by the poet or not. Now there is a line, and in that line he says that his neck was as white as lily flower. His neck was as white as a lily flower. Now you will not like a person whose neck is as white as a lily flower. Naturally, you will not do that, right? So he has, even through the appearance, the poet has tried to convey his own liking or disliking about the particular character. And above all, he is a hypocrite. Hypocrite means he always speaks, he always speaks and doesn't do the things. There is an apparent contrast between doing and the saying, and it is through this that the poet has tried to bring out the hypocrisy of this character. All right, so these are the three characters whom you have to remember: the character of the monk, the character of the friar, and the character of the prioress. These were the three characters that we talked about the other day. Now I come to the another set of character, and we would begin with the character of the merchant. Now, when I was talking about the 14th century society in England, if you recall, I talked about the fact that the class of merchant was gaining prominence. It has not become very prominent, but it was gaining prominence. And therefore, Chaucer has to keep that class happy. Chaucer, you must have felt, does not say anything against a person who belongs or who represents a powerful class. The class that has got his saying, that has got his assertion in the saying and doing of the society. And therefore, despite the fact that he doesn't like the merchant, he does not criticize him. Merchant, because it was the class that was emerging during the 14th century. As you know, that England has started trade with several countries during the 14th century. And it was because of this that the class of merchant has come into prominence. This it is because of this fact that the poet does not criticize the merchant, but he describes and again leaves it to the reader to decide whether they like the character of the character of the merchant or do not like the character of the merchant. Now I begin the character of the merchant. It is from Shrivardhan. It is from line number 270 from the prologue. I am reading out the lines and then I will explain those lines to you. A merchant was there with a forked beard. The poet says that there was a merchant also in the pilgrimage or among the pilgrims, and he had a forked beard. Forked beard in a way we can say उसके नुकीली दाढ़ी थी. Forked beard, in motle and high on horse he sat. He was wearing motle. Motle means multicolored dress. He was wearing motle, multicolored dress, because he was in a joyful mood. In motle and high on horse he sat, and he was riding on a horse. Now you see, he was riding on a horse, that speaks of the prominence of the merchant class. The merchant class enjoyed the prominence. It is obvious from the fact that the merchant is riding on the horse. And high on horse he sat, and he sat very proudly on the horse, means he was riding on the horse. Upon his head a Flanders beaver hat, and upon his head he was wearing a Flemish hat. Flemish hat is supposed to be very costly. He was wearing a Flemish hat. His boots clasped fair and fittingly. Boots mean shoes. His shoes were buckled handsomely and elegantly. The poet says that he has tied his shoes or boots very handsomely, very elegantly. His reasons he spake full solemnly. And the poet says, as far as the opinions of this merchant is concerned, he will speak about his opinions very simply, very seriously. Showing always the increase of his winning, he would deceive or kept for anything. Showing always, as far as the income of this gentleman is concerned, he would always show that his income was increasing. Winning means income, means he would pretend, although in reality, the poet will tell later that in reality he was in debt. But then, in order to keep himself very high so that he may command respect from the society, he would always tell the people that his income was always increasing. Winning means income here. He would the sea were kept for anything. He was of the opinion that the sea must be kept free so that maximum trade may take place across the country. Maximum trade can take place across the country. Now, if you remember, the sea trade has started during those days. It was only in 14th century that certain discoveries has taken place. It was through this discovery that America and England and France, they were interconnected. If you talk about Columbus and Vasco da Gama, their discovery took place around this period only. Well, could he in a sound sealed cell? But sorry, there is one line left. So let me go back. He would the sea were kept for anything betwixt Middlebrough and Orwell. Middlebrough is the name of Holland. Middlebrough is the name of Holland, and Orwell is the name of England. He was of the opinion that the sea, which connect Holland and England, must be kept free. Well, could he in a sound sealed cell? He very well knew to deal in foreign currencies. Means he would do import and export business, and therefore he knew how to deal in the foreign currencies. This worthy man full well his wit besat. Now the poet says that he was a worthy man who would employ his wit very well. He would speak very well and would convince the people with his own point of view. This worthy man employed his wit very well. There was no white that he was in debt. Now, the poet says that there was no one who knew that this gentleman was in debt. Although he was in debt, he was in debt. Who? The merchant. Earlier, the poet says that what was the doing of the merchant? The merchant would always show that his income was always increasing. But then the poet says that the fact of the matter is that he was in debt in reality. There was no white. No white means no person, that he was in debt. So stately was he of his governance. He was very dignified as far as the managing of his affairs is concerned. Affairs means the matters. As far as his management is concerned, he looked very dignified. Stately means dignified. Governance means the management. With his bargains and with his chavenness. Bargains means the buyings or bargains. And chavenness means financial matter or financial deals. Now, as far as the financial deals and buying and selling matters are concerned, his management was very fine and fair. Forsooth, he was a worthy man withal. And then the poet concludes that truly he was a worthy man, or indeed he was a worthy man. But sooth to say, I knew I knew how man him call. But the poet says that I confess that I do not know what man called him. Now the poet has not given his own opinion. He says that as far as the management of this merchant is concerned, he succeeded or he could manage the things very well. But then I am not very sure, he says, I am not very sure how the people called him, how the people considered him, what was the opinion of the people about him. I have told you this as I saw him. And as I told you earlier also, since the class of merchant was becoming very prominent during the 14th century, the poet does not criticize the class of merchant because otherwise he would invite the enmity of that class. So he says that as far as I have seen him, his management was very fair, but I cannot say how people viewed him, how people considered him, or what was the opinion of the people about him. Now, coming to the another character, there was a clerk also, and this clerk is a gentleman. This clerk is not the clerk as we have today, but this clerk is a scholarly person who has studied several books, including the religious books. A clerk there was of Oxenford also. There was a clerk also from Oxford. And when he talks about Oxford, because Oxford University has not come into being at that time. So now you need to understand that he's simply talking about Oxford, but that place was known as a place of scholarship, as a place of learning. Later on, the Oxford University came into being. There was also a clerk from Oxford that unto logic had long ago, who long before had begun the study of logic. Means he was a student of logic. The clerk was a student of logic. तर्क शास्त्र का विद्यार्थी था. As lean was his horse as is a rake, and the poet says that his horse was as lean as is a rake, RAKE. मीन्स उसका जो जो घोड़ा था वो बहुत पतला दुबला था. And he has no right fat I undertake. And then he says, I am very sure that neither his horse was very fat. His horse was as lean as I rake, and he has not right fat I undertake, and he was not also very fat, I can affirm this. And that speaks of the the very humble position that this gentleman enjoyed. For he had get him yet no benefice. I left out some lines. Let me go back. And he nas not right fat I undertake, but looked hollow and that too soberly. But he looked a very humble and abstemious also. Full threadbare was his overstay coat pea, and he says, as far as his short overcoat is concerned, it was very threadbare. Means he was not a rich person. The coat that he was wearing was very threadbare. Means उसमें से even the threads were visible in the coat that he was wearing. For he had get him yet no benefice, for he had not yet obtained an ecclesiastical living. He was absolutely a religious. He was a religious figure, but then the point is that he had not got any ecclesiastical income, and that was the problem, that he had to lead a poor life. He was so worldly for to have office, and he did not have any secular employment either. And that was the problem, that he was not very rich, he was not very affluent. For him was liver have at his bed's heat, and for he would rather have at the head of his bed what he would have at the head of his bed. And then in the following line he talks about that 20 books clad in black or read under the pillow that he would use. He did have as many as 20 books, which were clad either in the red or in the white colors. 20 books clad in black, not white but black, clad in black or reed. These books were covered either with the black or the red covering of Aristotle and of his philosophy. These books were about Aristotle and about his philosophy. Then robes rich or filthy or gay statuary. Then his robes means the clothes that he used to wear, or a fiddle or an elegant pastry. Now these were the other elements that he would have. Robes are the clothes that belong to the church. His robes were very rich. He would carry a fiddle also and an elegant pastry. Pastry means it was a sort of thing that he would carry, and from that he would recite some psalms. You can say a booklet that would contain psalms, but all be that he was a philosopher. But then the poet says, what I can conclude about him is that he was a philosopher. Yet had he but little gold in coffer. Nevertheless, the poet says he had but little gold in his treasure. Means he did not have any gold at all, but all that he might of his friends hint, but all that he could get from his friends on books and on learning he it spent. The poet says that he did not have any money at all, and moreover, the money that he would get from the friend, he was so scholarly and a lover, a voracious reader, that he would spend all that money that he would get from the friends on the purchase of the books. Of study took he most care and most heed, because he was very scholarly and he would pay utmost attention to his studies. Not to word spoke he more than was needed. He did not spoke more than the words that was needed. Means he would not speak much. He would speak only that much that was required, and short and quick and full of high sentence. And he would make use of short and lively sentences, which were full of elevated content. He would make use of short and lively sentences, which were which were full of elevated content. Showing in moral virtue was his speech. His speech always showed moral virtue. Means he would always talk about morality, and gladly would he learn and gladly teach. And the poet says that since he was a voracious reader, besides his being a voracious reader, he was a good learner and a good teacher also. He would gladly learn and gladly teach also. So now look at the character of the clerk. The clerk has been presented as a character who is very scholarly, who is a lover of the books, who is a voracious reader, and would spend all the money that he would get from his friends on the purchase of the books. The poet has all praise for him, he does not criticize him. And he says that as far as the humble appearance of that man is concerned, he is very modest and humble. And he says, I know that he did not have much money or much wealth either. After having talked about the clerk, we come to the another uh, person or the another pilgrim, and he is the sergeant of law. A sergeant of the law, war and vice. The poet says that there was a sergeant of law in our company and he was very wise. He was a wise man that oft had been at the Paris, and the poet says that this person could very often be seen at the porch of St. Paul's. Now, Kanaya, you remember this Pervis? Pervis was is the name that was used for St. Paul's, and it was the place where the lawyers used to gather. It was the place where lawyers used to gather. And since he was the sergeant of law, he could very often be seen at that place. Look at the minute details. The poet has even pinpointed the location of these people, the profession, the professional places. Like if you have to meet a lawyer, where will you go? You will go that there is the bar where the lawyers sit. So I will go to the bar and talk to them. Similarly, the poet has talked about St. Paul's Place, where the lawyers would usually meet. So he makes a mention, the poet makes a mention of that place. There was also full rich of excellence, and the poet says that he was very rich. Rich, not in the sense of wealth, but he was very rich in superior qualities also. Means he was very virtuous, he was very qualitative. Discreet he was, and of great reverence. Discreet he was very judicious. He was very judicious. Discreet he was means he was very judicious and of great reverence, and commanded great dignity also. Reverence, dignity. He seemed switch. His words were so wise. The poet says that he seemed very dignified and his words were very wise. Justice he was full of honeyness, and the poet says that very often he would act as a judge in the court of assize. Again, look at the minute observation of the poet. The poet has also talked about the fact that very often he would be acting as a judge at a particular place, as if the poet knows each and everything about the sergeant of law. All right, he has collected all the details from the sergeant of the law, and now he is passing on the details to the readers. All right, so look at how he tries to make the portrait very realistic. Although they are imaginative, the poet does not have these characters in front of him, but then the way he narrates them brings about the element of reality into it. And as Johnson has talked about, that an art, a real art, must create a make believe world. And this is what Chaucer has tried to do here. He creates a make believe world. We tend to believe what the poet says. We tend to believe that there is a sergeant of law, and this sergeant of law, the poet knows each and everything, and perhaps he is introducing the sergeant of law to us. This is what we believe about every character. Justice he was full of an assize, by patent and by plain commission. As far as the royal appointment and jurisdictions are concerned, he would be acting as a judge in the court of assize. For his science and for his high renown, as far as science means knowledge, as far as his knowledge and excellent reputation is concerned, nobody could equal him. Of fees and drops had he many own. Now the poet says that he used to earn a lot of money. He had many grants from various corners. Means his sources of income were so many, he did have several sources of income. So great a purchaser was nowhere known. And he says that there was nowhere so great a land buyer. Now you see, very implicitly the poet has pointed out that he must be amassing money. He must be accumulating money either by hook or by crook, because he says that there was no greater a purchaser of land than he was. He was a great purchaser of land. And who would purchase the land? The person who has got the money. And how he used to earn the money? The person who would believe in the moral means cannot earn that much money that he would be a great land purchaser. And he was the greatest one, greatest land purchaser. So great a purchaser was nowhere known. The poet says that I have never seen such a great purchaser. All was fees simple to him in effect. In fact, what he did have was that land was, the poet here makes use of something very beautiful. He says that he did not know how much wealth he did have or what were his possessions. He was not aware of that. Now, the person who is not aware of the possessions, how much wealth he did have, you can just imagine. His purchasing might not been in fact, and he says, as far as his purchasing is concerned, that could not be invalidated, because he knew all the knowledge, he knew all the rules, he did have the legal knowledge, and thereby he would validate every income that he would earn. Maybe means किस तरह से the money that he would accrue either by hook or by crook, he would turn that money into white money by his own means of validation, by applying the rules of law, because he knew how to change the black money into white money. Means, and therefore there was no one on the land who could invalidate the money that he had. Nowhere so busy a man as he Darnayas. And the poet says that I do not know that there was such a busy man in the whole land. If you remember Kanaya, in A Tale of Two Cities, if you have read that novel, there is a lawyer, Jaggers. And Jaggers, what does Jaggers do? Jaggers goes to his room again and again, and he has got a wash basin, and he goes, he meets the client, and after having met the client, he goes and cleans his hand every time he meets a patient. So now, why am I telling you this? Because you see, nowadays this has become so prominent. All right, but then the people were aware of these things even during those periods. All right, and legal profession commanded respect all the time in all the ages. And yet he seemed busier than he was. In terms had he cases and dooms all. Now he says that he was a knowledgeable person as far as the field of law is concerned, because he could remember all the cases and the decisions that were made. He had in yearbooks all the cases and decisions that from the time of King William were full. He says that he knew, he could remember all the cases and the decisions right from the time of the King William. That too he could indict and make a thing. Not only this, but he knew how to compose and draw a legal document, how to compose and write a writ that he knew. किस तरह से रिट पिटीशन को तैयार करना था, he knew that. There could no white pinch at his writing. And then the poet says, pinch means flaw or shortcoming. The poet says that nobody could find any defect, any shortcoming in his writing. That too he could indict and make a thing. There could no white pinch at his writing, and every statute could he play by root. And the poet says that every statute he remembered by rote, he remembered by heart. यानी कि उसके हर नियम याद था, हर नियम याद था कि he knew by heart, he remembered by heart. He wrote but whomly in medley coat. The poet says that he rode, but he was simply wearing a very simple coat. It was medley means multicolored coat, but then it was a simple multicolored coat. As although he was the richest person, one of the richest person, but then he rode in the multicolored coat that was very simple. girt with a scent of silk, with various smalls. And the poet says that it was tied with a belt of silk and small stripes. It was tied with a belt of silk and small stripes of his array till I no longer tell. The poet says, I am not going to tell you anything more about his clothing now. He says, I have said several things about his clothing, but then now I will not tell you anything more about his clothing. After having talked about the sergeant of law, the poet comes to the character of Franklin. Again, he goes to the church. Now, what he was talking about in the form of the merchant, he was talking about the commercial class. In the form of the clerk, he was talking about the professional class. In the form of this gentleman, sergeant of law, again, he was talking about a professional class. And now again, he is talking about a professional class as far as the church is concerned. Or he is talking about a professional who belongs to the church. A Franklin was in his company. The poet says that there was a Franklin also in his company. Wit was his bird, as is the daisy. And now look, the poet says that his beard was as white as the flower daisy. कहता है उसकी बियर्ड जो थी वो उसी तरह से सफेद थी जैसे कि देसी का फ्लावर होता है. Of its complexion he was sanguine, and as far as his face is concerned, he was sanguine in color. Sanguine is a color. He was sanguine in color. Well loved he by the more a soap in wine, and he very well loved a bit of bread dipped in wine in the morning. Means when he would have his breakfast, in the breakfast he would like to have his bread, and these bread must have been dipped in the wine. To live in delight was ever his one, and the poet says that his custom was always to live in delight, in happiness, for he was Epicurus' own son. He was the son of Epicurus. Do you know the philosophy of Epicurus? Epicurus philosophy.
No, sir. No.
Okay, in fact, we can compare Epicurus with Charvak in India. Charvak philosopher. All right, and like Charvak, he also believed in the fact eat, drink, and be merry. Khao, pure, mast raho. Right, so that was the philosophy of Epicurus. You must have heard the name of Charvak. Charvak was a philosopher who belonged to India, and Epicure and Charvak, they believed almost in the same philosophy. खाओ पियो मस्त रहो की फिलोसफी थी जिसमें उनका विश्वास था. To live in Delhi it was ever his one, for he was Epicurus' own son. That held opinion that plain Delhi was very felicit perfect. He held the opinion that pure pleasure was truly happiness. Now there is a difference when we talk about pleasure and happiness. When you talk about happiness, happiness comes from inside. But when you talk about pleasure, you create pleasure by doing certain things. So when we talk about pleasure, it refers to the external phenomenon. And when you talk about the happiness, he believed in the principle that it is the basic purpose of every pleasure must be to give happiness, or the basic purpose that every pleasure must be done to arouse happiness of heart was very perfect. Felicity means happiness. Perfect means perfect. And householder, and that a great was he. He was a great householder. Saint Julian he was in his country. He was Saint Julian. Now Saint Julian, do you know, Kanaya, if I can ask you, who was Saint Julian? Now therefore remember that when we talk about Saint Julian, we have to say that Saint Julian, there used to be patron for everything. And this Saint Julian was the patron of hospitality. Saint Julian was the patron of hospitality. Remember this. He was Saint Julian in his country. He was known as the patron of hospitality in his own country. Means if somebody would come to his house, he would welcome them in such a way by offering them eat and drink that people would feel very obliged. In other words, he was a great host, and therefore the comparison made is very appropriate. Means he was a patron of hospitality. All right, that you need to remember. He was a patron of hospitality. Saint Julian, he was in his country, his breed, his ale was always his own. The poet says that if anybody would come to him, he would serve him bread, ale. Ale means liquor, and was always of the same. And you see, these liquor and breads, they were always of good quality. Afternoon means they used to be of a very good quality. His breed, his ale was always afternoon, a better envied man was nowhere known. And then the poet concludes about him, he says, nowhere was there any man better stoked with wine than that man. Without baked meat was never his house. The poet says that his house was never without baked pies, means always in his house was present the ale and the meat. Not only the ale and the meat, but of fish and flesh, and that's so plenteous. The poet says that not only meat and ale, but even fish and flesh you will find in plenty in the house of this Franklin. It's nude in his house of meat and drink. Now the poet says, look at the simile. He says that his house snowed with food and drink. कहता है उसके घर में फूड और ड्रिंक बहता था बर्फ की तरह से, पानी की तरह से बहता था. In his house, food and drink snowed of all dainties that man could think. Not only this, but his house did have all delicacies that a man could think of all the dainties that man could imagine after the sundry regions of the year. Sundry means various seasons of the year, and these delicacies used to be in accordance with the season. For example, in the winter, you will like to have this type of delicacy, but in the summer, you would have to this type of delicacy. So, in accordance with the season, people will get the delicacies in his house of all dainties that man could think after the sundry season of the year. So changed he his meat and his supper. In accordance with the season, he would change his meat and supper. Do you know how supper differs from dinner? Kanaya, any answer? Supper and dinner?
No, sir.
These things, I'll not forgive you for these things. You must remember these things. Because you see, when we talk about dinner, dinner in a way, for example, when you are having the fast, you take dinner, you don't take lunch. Even when you are taking the meal during the afternoon, that will not be called lunch, that would be called the dinner. And thereby, dinner is the main meal of the day. But when you are taking breakfast, lunch, and then the dinner would be the meal that is taken in the evening. All right, so dinner you are aware. All right, lunch usually is the meal that is taken in the afternoon. But when we talk about the supper, supper is the meal that is taken before going to bed. And usually in the context of India, that supper is a glass of milk that your mother gives to you before going to bed. The mother comes.
Sorry, sir. Did you ask anything?
Yes, I asked you how is dinner different from supper?
Oh, sorry, sir. Dinner. I know about dinner, but supper I have don't
Supper
know.
is the meal or the light food or the light
Oh,
eat that you have before going to bed. All right, in the case
okay.
of India, it is a glass of milk that all of us have before going to bed.
Yes,
All
yes,
right,
sir.
that would be supper for us. Now, in
Yes.
the context of Europeans, what do the Europeans do? They would eat a chocolate, usually a chocolate, that would give them some energy so that they can sleep well. That is known as supper. So there is a difference. But then dinner is
Mhm,
not
sir.
all the time the meal that is taken in the evening. This is what I wanted to tell you. Dinner can be the main meal of the day also. For example, when you observe the fast, then the meal that you take will be dinner, that will not be lunch. So dinner is either the meal that is taken in the evening, or it may be the main meal of the day when you have the fast. Okay, Kanaya, is that all right?
Yes, yes. Now, sir,
Okay,
it's all right.
okay, okay.
There's
Now,
network problem, so that's why I can't hear
no,
clearly.
no harm, no harm. Thank you so much. In fact, I think that there are some disturbances
Yes.
in your mobile today, means in your network today. So that is
Many
why
times I
you are not
lost my connection and
properly,
again try to connect.
you are not able to properly connect. But
Yes, sir.
anyway, you are maintaining your. This is what Sai Baba says. What Sai
Yes, sir.
Baba says? Sai Baba says Shraddha Shaburi. All right, so you are having Shraddha and you are having Saburi also. Saburi in the sense that you are having the patience. That I will not leave even if this network does not permit me. I will make the maximum effort. So this is what you are doing. Uh, it snewed in his house of meat and drink, of old dainties that man could think after the sundry seasons of the year. So changed he his meat and his supper. Full many a pat, full many a fat Patrick had he in mew. And the poet says that he had very many fat partridges in pans. Pans ka matlab bada. He did have many partridges in his pans, and many a bream and many a luce in his stew. And not only this, he had many a bream and many a pike in his fish pond. Means he did have a fish pond also, and the fish pond he did have pikes, and he did have partridges in the pans. Woe was his cook, but if his sauce were, woe was his cook unless his sauce was point and sharp and ready all his gear. Now he says that even the cook that was with him. Now, the poet simultaneously he is including the cook in the character of the Franklin for the reason that he has been termed as a good host. Now, if somebody happens to ask you who has been presented as a pattern of hosts, then you have to say that it is no one but the Franklin who has been presented as the patron of the host in the prologue. Woe was his cook, but his sauce were. The poet says that as far as the cook is concerned, he was also a nice gentleman who went and sharp and ready all his gear. He did have all the time he was ready for the purpose of cooking. His table dormant in his hole always. In his hole, he would always be there at the dining table in the hole. He stood ready covered all the long day, and he would keep his table covered with a cloth all the long day so that whatever he has prepared is not spoiled. At seasons there was he lord and shire, and then he says, this Franklin, he presided as a lord and sire at the court sessions. Means he was one of the chieftain of that area. And whenever any court session was held, he would preside over that court session. Full of time he was knight for the sire, an alas and a gypser, all of silk. And what he would do, he would carry a dagger and a purse, and all of that was made of silk. Even the dagger was made of silk, means the cover of the dagger was that of silk, and then the purse was also made of silk. Hing at his girdle, wit as morn milk. And he says, as far as the belt is concerned, as far as his belt is concerned, it looked as white as morning milk, as white as morning milk. A shreeve had he been, and a contour. The poet says, now this was the designation, this was the task that was given to him. He had been a sheriff and an auditor of taxes. Now these were the ranks. Sheriff was one of the tax collection authorities. All right, so he was the sheriff also and an auditor of taxes. Was nowhere switchable the Vavasar. Vavasar means landowner. The poet says that I have never seen that there was any worthy landowner, more worthy landowner than this, than this means than the Franklin. And here it is that the character of the Franklin comes to an end. Now, now if you look at the character of the Franklin, you will find that the poet has talked about that he was a great host, and then he was a worthy landowner also. Because worthy landowner, why? You can compare him with our Patwari, or let us say with our Girdavar. What do? They go to the land, and this is how they are amassing the money from the people. Followed by doing several activities. You see, you can better appreciate a literary work of art if you link a character or the literary work of art with your background, with your surroundings. If you succeed in linking the things, means in linking the literary work with your surroundings, you would be able to enjoy that literary work very appropriately, very properly. I stop it here. Thank you so much for being with me. I do not know, there might have been the problem of the net, and therefore several people could not join. Even Srivardhan, who joined, now could not sustain himself. Kanaya, you also, as I said to you, you tried your level best and tried to sustain yourself. Anyway, thank you so much. I hope that you are gaining something. If you are gaining,
Yes.
then try to join. If you don't gain, if you think that this is all useless, देन ये मत कर, सोच करके सस्टेन मत करिएगा कि सर ने कह दिया था इसलिए मुझे ज्वाइन करना ही है.
नो सर, नो सर,
और
ऐसा
if
कुछ
you
नहीं है
think,
सर, आपसे पढ़ना ये तो बहुत बड़ी बात है सर.
so thank you so much for that. So if you think that you are gaining something, that was the whole idea. All right, but then this is more than clear that after
सर
having
एक्सपोजर मिलता
attended
है
my
इसमें.
classes, you need not read prologue to the Canterbury Tales for your NET examination.
यस
That I
सर,
can assure you.
लर्निंग का एक्सपोजर मिलता है सर इसमें.
Yes, very true, very true. I do agree. I do agree. I do agree.
यस.
And I see a sort of improvement in you. After I have taught you online, you have improved more. I do not know what the reasons are, but then you have improved more because you are more interested, all right, in this online business, number one. And therefore, you tend to be more attentive. And we people also come very well prepared because we think that we have to give our best. And these this year I have tried to record these things, means from today I am recording these things, and I hope that I will put them on my YouTube channel also. So after I have done that, I will give you the password of that YouTube channel, so whenever you are in the need, you can just go to my channel and consult it, listen to the recording, all right, from there. Right, so thank you so much for being with us. Tomorrow, I do not know whether people will join or do not join, but let us keep a holiday tomorrow. Right, so tomorrow we will not join, we will not continue the class. Day after tomorrow at the same time we will meet again. Okay, thank you so much. Bye bye, have a nice day.